This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Pete, you and I have known each other for a very long time.
Yes.
And I certainly know a lot about you. We've heard glimpses of your background and your history over the shows that we've recorded. And we've had a number of people wanting to know more, wanting to find out, what your background is like, what you've done, and tell us about some of your experiences.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
I've spent 70 plus months in combat zones.
70 plus months.
Right. And over 1,000 missions outside of the wire, talking to in combat missions, basically.
Wow.
You're
lucky to be here.
Yeah, I've been shot at. I've been hit by tanks and blowed up and mortared, all kinds of things.
Oh my God.
Yes. I've seen a lot of those kind of things. But within that, all that chaos and all that danger, my job is to go out and talk to people. Mm-hmm. So talking to Afghans, talking to Iraqis, Bosnians, and trying to figure out how to match our intentions and goals with what we're doing as a State Department or as a military, and matching that with what reality is on the ground. So sort of like the president can establish a foreign policy initiative, but someone has to make that foreign policy real on the ground. You can bring all the help you want, but if no one wants your help, or you can train all the police you want, but if the police aren't recognized as being beneficial or trustworthy, then your foreign policy can't succeed.
Right. So it's the tactical on the ground efforts or implementation of public policy.
Yeah. You can do the actual tactical stuff well too. Like, we really are training these police. They now can give each other IVs and first aid. But will anybody call them? No, they don't trust them. So it's all about those. And so what I do a lot of times with organizations is I take that same thing where we have this wonderful view, and internally we measure these successes because we focus on effect, and I'm always looking at affect. So if you're trying to create a certain value, are you also accounting for the affect, for the culture? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes organizations struggle to do that internally. They need someone externally to come and look at what they are doing, their practice, whatever that practice is, because culture is omnipresent. The laws of culture are like gravity. Like, culture doesn't matter to you until you walk off the edge of a building.
Right.
And it's like, oh man, culture's been messing me up. So that happens all the time.
What are some examples of issues within a corporate culture that can really mess up the strategic vision of the company? Culture works off of a communicative path, and it's very spherical. So you have linear goals and achievements, and so you do things that inexorably lead to the success of your company. Mm-hmm. Culture divides that. So internally, if you look at your company, there are tribes within your company. There's AR, AP folks, there's sales folks, and those folks are as different as they can be. And a lot of times they work at cross purposes. I mean, I've worked in sales jobs where if I don't collect the money from the client, I lose my commission. And I'm like, well, what are the accounting people doing? Right. And so you have this, they're not doing their job. And you have the same goal, but you have different tribes and you don't interact ever. So you don't want to have cultures clash, but you want to have them intersect enough so that one can understand the other. You have a different way of reaching your goal. I have a different way of reaching my goal. You aren't collaborative if you're ignorant of those two things. Right. So when you are ignorant of those two things, you have negative outcomes that are tied to culture. One of them is incompetence is a perception. So if you've noticing that there's an incompetence perception, you've got a culture problem. There's one that's passive aggressive. If you're getting passive aggressive behavior, you've got a cultural problem. Mm-hmm. And there's also this corruption based thing where the person is doing something only for their own benefit. Is that like political?
It could be. Mm-hmm. It could be, absolutely. So you see this person as just doing things for their own benefit, and that means that you don't understand how they make decisions and what goal they have. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. They likely don't do the same for you. So backing out and understanding mutually what your path, what your benefit, what your goal is, I can accept that your path is going to be different if I've talked to you about that and you've had this cultural exchange.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the first steps that you take when you're looking to evaluate a company that may be exhibiting some of these cultural issues internally?
Yeah. So let me give you. I'm going to give you a war-based example. So every night we used to go out in the green zone area by Baghdad, and we would talk to locals. Now I could say, "Where are the bombs?" But who's going to answer that question? That's silly. So I can't go into a company and say, "Tell me where the problems are." You have to talk to people and let them give you the information. So I interact with these local Iraqis, and I never ask where the bombs are. I say, "What's going on?" And I frankly don't care where the bombs are, because that's really. This will sound crazy. That's secondary to what I'm trying to do. There's always going to be bombs. You can never stop chasing bombs. But if I can figure out two things that are simple that helps and accomplishes a positive affect with those people, then that's so much more powerful. And they'll give me bombs. And I'm not looking for bombs. They're going to give them to me. They're going to be like, "Look, hey."
I hope not, actually.
Yeah. Ted, 2 doors down, that guy's got bombs. And I'll say, "Don't tell me that. Tell the Army guy that." And I'll get away from that guy. But they'll give me that because I've created this affect. Mm-hmm. So when they say, "There's not enough water here," I'll say, "I can't fix water. I can't fix electricity." And I get that those things suck. Everybody's told me that. Tell me something that I can fix right now. And they'll say, "My kids can't go to school because I'm not going to let them walk 5 miles. And because of the way the cement walls that are keeping everybody safe are lined up, my kids can't go to school. If we could move one of those walls, put a guard there, we'll give you someone to guard that thing." So they'll give me the answer. And I don't try to outdo the company that if I'm working for a company, whatever company it is, fill in the blank, I don't try to be them. I'm me trying to understand them. So I don't try to out IBM an IBM, or I don't try to out Microsoft a person that works in Microsoft. They know that culture. They know their thing. So I listen to them, draw out those key lessons, and then illustrate that, because communication vertically is very tough. Very, very tough. Everybody's driven to give a pre-programmed answer that is focused on our
satisfying the CEO.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I call that an accountability ladder. Everybody's on the same ladder. You're all focused upwards. No one's focused on the ground, and everybody's got everybody's heads up their butts because they're just worried about pleasing the boss, and you can't come back with genuine bad news.
Right. So what kinds of companies, I guess my question is, do companies even recognize that they have an issue? How do they know?
When I've helped out companies, it's often they'll bring me in for a certain problem. Mm-hmm. And we'll deal with that problem for sure. But it'll be other things. It'll be more of a systemic problem that.
So it's like you kind of come in and open up a can of worms.
Yeah, but the thing is the can's already there. The worms are already there.
It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have a simple communication problem. Well, mm-hmm. I don't have to tell you how to solve that. You're the CEO. You know how to solve that.
Right.
I'll help you.
Right. But you really then need to have, buy-in from the top. It has to be an initiative that comes from the top. Has to be. Because I'm going to go ask questions, and I'm going to bring things and I'm going to report things that are ugly. I do work in a negative space because there's an elephant in the room, and I'm trying to figure out, is it a gray elephant? Is it a pink elephant? I don't know what kind, but I'm trying to describe this thing. And I'm not always right. That's the other thing is everybody has to accept that there are errors in cultural things, because you're trying to describe something that you can't it's not linear. Mm-hmm. It's this cloud. And so you try to describe these things, and you're right. Oftentimes people will come back and they'll say, "This isn't true." And I'm right. So what I typically do is I write about my observations. These are my observations. This is what I think it means. And slowly the picture realizes and it becomes something that's real based upon all of these observations. But when you come back at me and say, "Your observations are wrong," like, no, they're not. These are my observations. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a different point of view, and I'll accept that, and I want to hear about it. But I'm hired to give you the truth. I don't owe you success of your company. I owe you the truth. That's right. What I bring ground truth. What is really going on out here? So when you have unknown, like I had a commander one time say, "We have aid. We want to give it to the Afghans. I don't understand why they won't take it." Well, I can't just go out and say, "Why won't you take the aid?" I can't do that. It might take me 2-3 months to figure out what that thing is. And in this case, aid equaled death. Really?
Yeah, it was too dangerous. They couldn't, there was not enough.
They were seen in alignment with the Americans.
Yes, right. And there was no security in the area. So if they accepted anything openly, it would be lethal. And so they were never going to accept aid. And they also weren't going to give that up easily. I had to build trust. So all of these things go into what I do. So a company brings me in, they have a problem. I start talking to people and I start illustrating the things that I see. And oftentimes it's the CEO or whatever leader I'm talking to will sit there and they'll say, I know what to do now. They have the resources, they have the knowledge. What they don't have is the truth.
It's just a matter of surfacing that truth, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And one of the things I know you're very passionate about is helping other veterans.
Oh, for sure.
And I know that you've got some initiatives helping enterprises and corporations hire more veterans. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is a big deal for me, obviously, because I've been a veteran. And what happens to veterans when we transition from service, there's a lot of misconception because, frankly, corporations don't have the capacity to hire veterans. It's like any other diversity group. So how do you deal with hiring a bunch of people from this country or a bunch of people with this particular diversification difference?
Well, it's you guys actually speak a different language.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah. I won't bore you with, but I could do a whole like 2-sentence thing where
I've heard.
Yeah. So developing a capacity to not just say we want to hire veterans because they have good leadership training, but actually have detailed knowledge of what a great veteran looks like for your company. Not just hire a veteran. We want to hire people from Alabama. You can't do that. That doesn't work. So you have to be better at doing that. You have to develop a capacity to say, first off, to say we want to hire veterans. We want to develop the capacity.
Why is it good to hire veterans?
One of the things that veterans bring that a lot of organizations don't get from, say, someone who's freshly out of college or maybe, a little bit past that point, when you're in an environment where the commander says, I plan to do this, the CEO says, I want to do this, everybody in the room in the military is writing that down. That's the intent. They're going to do everything they can to follow that. It's not, the ego is taken out because that's your mission, is to give that CEO whatever they need. And then if you've been working for 12 hours, like I've done this, we've gone out on a mission, been hot, sweaty, completely drained physically. And then all of a sudden this what they call a hasty mission, this sudden mission pops up and they're like, we're going right back out. And you don't know how long you're going to be out for. So you put some food in your pocket and a lot of guys put a dip in their mouth and you go back out and you come back in and you've been out for 30 hours. It's a 30-hour day and not an easy day, a long, hard day. That's all right. We do that.
Right. So vets really do whatever they can to get the job done.
Yeah. And it's not everything that the military does is tied to what corporations do. Yes, infantry guys are not directly correlatable, but they train all the time. You can train an infantry person to do anything. And so those guys are master trainers. Operations. You kidding me? Operations, logistics, moving things. I mean, a commander deals with on a day-to-day basis, besides operations, moving food, moving water, getting people home who are having babies, getting people home who have vacation, making sure they have awards, making sure there's enough shoelaces in that you making sure, and a big portion of what they do is that. So think of all the people that just work on making the unit be successful. And it's like the number kind of changes from time to time, but it's basically 10-1. A person who's actually a combatant is 1. And there's 10 to 11 people that specifically support that person. So when you look at all the things a corporation does, the military does that.
Right. And vets are such a valuable resource to companies because of the skills and experience that they bring to the table. But it's still challenging because, as we mentioned, they speak another language.
They speak another language.
So how do you help bridge that gap between companies and vets that want to connect with each other, but yet there's a divide?
Well, there has to be. So any company that wants to interact externally with veterans has a problem. They already all have one strike against them, if I can use a baseball analogy, because we don't trust you. We've all heard it. Yeah, we want to hire vets. So you apply and you get nothing back. Well, that's not a company that wants to hire vets. So everybody has that strike regardless of their intention.
Right.
And I'm going to use a specific example of Hilton. They have a pledge to hire veterans. Well, the PR person did the right thing, put out a press release. And this, about this stuff.
Right.
They put out a press release saying, here's our pledge, 10,000 people by the year 2016. Nothing since has come out. What's the score? You guys are serious. There should be some successes along, but there's no successes. You can't find them.
Right.
So it's not that Hilton doesn't have great intent. isn't doing the right thing, they're just not telling anybody about it. And it's no different than training the police in Iraq. We've trained these police. They're awesome. Have you told anybody? No. So that's one of the things I work on is yes, there's an HR function, but there's also this marketing and PR function where we support vets. You get to put that on your brand and say, this is what we do. And you also get to tell the vets externally, like, we really do want you.
Right,
you know?
right.
Also, in that vein, interact in the veteran marketplaces where they go, where are they graduating from? Because nobody self-develops like the military. If you want a reason to hire military people, if you go into a staff room, let's say that the unit is about 5,000 people, that's a brigade. In that staff room, everybody's got at least a bachelor's. Likely, most of the crowd has a master's, if not more than one master's, and there's probably a couple of PhDs or, about to be, and that's
very
just the military.
Market.
Yes. Yeah. So as the company does its mission, the commander is constantly developing people. Like, you need to get published. You need to do. So there's constantly, you have this urge. You feel you're not doing your job if you're not reading something or creating some kind of a new ability within your skill set. You have to be in the places where those veterans do that self-development. If you're going to be in a company that's going to be effective at hiring these people, because if you're going to hire them, you want the best people. You don't just want veterans. You want veterans graduating from USC's MBV program. They have a Master's of Business, but for veterans. So they take out all the I'm 21 years old and graduated, lack of experience. They take all that stuff out because the veteran has that stuff, and they give them entrepreneurial skills. And it's not to downplay an MBA. It's just you've got a person that's more seasoned. So what degree do you give? Who wouldn't want to be in that audience, mentoring those people, cherry picking the ones that you want? Companies don't know to do that because they don't know where veterans self-develop.
Right. So how do you help companies in that?
I bring those skills. How do you communicate with veterans? How do you sort them? How do we decide what kind of veteran? You think about all the data we have where we can look and say, this is specifically what I want, whatever it is. What does my customer look like? Well, they're 25 to 45 years old. They own a home. They have a boat. We can look at all these things. The same thing with hiring a veteran. You can create a profile. And you'll know.
We call that personas in marketing.
Yeah, you would exactly. You'd want to have this persona where you can say, I want a Navy person. This person should be an officer, but they could be enlisted if they have this degree. And so then you can target those people if you know to do it. And that's what I bring in, is that capability where now you're engaging with veterans better. If you want to excel at hiring veterans, engage with them. When you see a veteran resume come in, take the time. And I know it's hard to scale, but take the time to say, I see that you are a veteran. I have someone that knows how to talk to you. And then that interaction, which can all be automated, is really the first part of letting that person know that we are genuine about this. And maybe it hurts a little bit man-hour wise, but that's that hurt. That's part of the cost of having this pledge.
In the end, it's not just pure PR value
right.
that companies should be doing this. It's also to give back
exactly.
to a truly notable cause for the people that have served our country.
Right. And one thing that I think it's important to realize is I talked about that 10 to 1, 11 to 1 ratio. That one person is in that role for a limited amount of time. So that's a revolving door. So that one goes up and they support the unit. They're working in operations. They're working in planning. They're working in all these
really wide, diverse area of skills.
I mean, if you break your leg doing something combat-y, right, you're not going to walk around with a broken leg all day. You go and you do something else for a while. And oftentimes those people find themselves a niche and they become the best at whatever that thing is. Riding training, but you want to get someone that can develop training. A military person can do that all day long. But if you look at them and say, well, that person's an infantryman, and that's it, then you miss out on 10, 15 years this person's put into the 1,000+ hours on platform training people in any number of things. You'd miss out on that because you just saw infantry. And companies can develop that capacity. That's what I try to bring them.
That's great. Great. Well, what kinds of companies, what are you looking for? Who should be reaching out to you, and how can you help them?
I like to tell CEOs, anytime you have an undefinable problem, what's your hardest problem? Give me a call. Let's talk. Let's set up a meeting and talk about what that problem looks like, and we can figure out what working on it looks like. straight out. If you want to hire veterans, I have resources. I can teach you the external part. I can teach you the internal part. And then what happens in transition in between. Veterans won't stay in a job if they perceive that they're not going to be able to improve. So we're really good at leaving within 18 months. Let me help you eliminate that so that your veterans stay and you get to reap the benefit of those folks being there. Any company that wants to do that, any company that has a weird problem they can't define, they believe it's probably a social problem, let's talk.
You're their guy.
I am the guy.
Right. Great. Well, it's been awesome learning more about you, Pete.
Thank you so much.